Welcome back, Astro listeners, to Star Lady Soul Reader Network. This is Media Monk, and as usual, I'm pleased to be joined by our shining star of the zodiac. It's Star Lady. Hi, Star Lady.
Hello, Media Monk.
And we all remember Star Lady is Kim Marie, the managing director for our network. EAN continues to certify new evolutionary astrologers, and yet we also attract a lot of people to our website looking for forecasting webinars, the Astro Library, perhaps interest in our EA course, and a lot of other stuff at www.evolutionaryastrology.net. Always call 605-348-5111 if you have any information or any questions on the information you see there. So here we are. It's a new moon, and I guess I'll turn it over to you, honey. We got pretty good list of things to talk about.
All right. Thank you very much, Media Monk. Hello, everyone. We are recording this the day after the solar eclipse, which was February 17th at 29 degrees Aquarius. Let's just say that, okay? And we are in the midst of starting a North Node eclipse season. What that means is the sun is traveling near the North Node of the moon in Pisces at about 9 degrees. And so, this solar eclipse season in the late degrees, or the solar eclipse happening in the late degrees of about 29 degrees Aquarius, it can give us a lot of insight, sparks of awareness, future-orientated messaging. It can give us some ideas of what might be coming down the road for ourselves, and maybe even on a collective level as well. And I'll speak to that with the Saturn-Neptune conjunction coming up in a couple of days. But, I didn't mention this the last time around, but when we have the full moon of Leo, and it takes place sometimes right around early February, that always was a time period for divination with our ancestors, where we would, cast the rune stones, or look at tea leaves in a teacup, or just watch the symbolism of an evening's fire. It was always a time period for us to look forward into the future and either set the intentions of where we wanted to go, or to, again, see how well we could forecast it, my preferred word over prediction, how we could forecast what was ahead in the coming year, especially as in the northern hemisphere, the light is returning, so to speak. And so you can reflect upon this in your own personal ways. We will follow this solar eclipse up with a lunar eclipse March 3rd that will take place at Sun 13 Pisces, Moon 13 degrees Virgo. So we have almost a mixture of that Aquarian energy looking forward and Piscean energy of making peace with what's dissolving, with what's no longer lasting for us. And we have been going through that with the Saturn-Neptune balsamic phase that they have been in for the last couple of years. That is about to switch this week. Before I get there, though, I just want to say that we are in the time period where Mars is traveling with the Sun and inner planets. And for those of you who have clear skies, as we move into this latter part of February. You can either look in the evening skies, or if you were an early riser before the sun, you can look out in the early eastern sky in the mornings. But again, all these inner planets are going to be lining up and visible in the sky along with Saturn. And so this is a great time to get outdoors, early evenings, early mornings, and look at the evening skies if you want to watch the heavens. It's something that I love to do personally for myself, living out in nature most of the time. So I encourage all of you to enjoy some nighttime sky here in this last half of February. We're going to have the sun in a couple of days go into Pisces, and I would like to share a mantra I created a long time ago. My Pisces mantra: I am in wholeness with my reality. I am in wholeness, Pisces, with my reality. This is the message of the solar month of Pisces as we are finishing up the 12th archetype of the circle. What is there to surrender? What is there to release? How are we being asked to take our next step of spiritual merging with source energy? We are also going to have Mars move into Pisces March 2nd through April 9th. March 2nd through April 9th, Mars in Pisces. We already have Mercury there for 2 months. Mercury in Pisces, February 6th to April 14th. Got a retrograde coming up here in another week or so. And we have Venus in Pisces, February 10th through March 6th. So, as these inner planets are moving through Pisces with the sun, this is a time period to really search for inner peace. This is a time period to renew your spiritual relationship with source energy, however that is taking place for you. We literally have Neptune just finishing up a 165-year cycle through the zodiac, the last 14 years in its own sign. Take a moment to reflect. What has changed for you in the last 10 years, in the last 12 years, in the last 14 years of your life? I mean, for us, it's been quite personal. If you have followed our last forecast and the storm we had just before the winter solstice, when we lost, 24 trees on our acreage in the mountains, and a dozen of those trees on our house, and totally demolished my whole gardening sanctuary. I have been going through my own losses, my own surrenders, my own making peace with everything. I have not posted a lot of photos on social media until we are done with that long, interesting relationship with insurance claims. At some point I will post the photos, but not now, not at this moment. And so Mars in Pisces, it's an interesting step. It is not its comfort zone. It rules Aries, and we, are heading into the Saturn, Neptune in Aries, but Mars is not there yet. It's really asking us to finish up with congruency between beliefs and actions. In other words, is Mars just blindly carrying forward because it doesn't want to be in touch with realities? It doesn't like Virgo polarity? Is Mars doing its distortions of manipulations and connivings? Distortions of Pisces can really fall in to that sadomasochistic extremism of, victims and victors, and Mars can play that role if it is wounded. And so it takes effort for us to, again, really match up our beliefs and our actions to be congruent with each other as Mars moves through Pisces. We have to walk our talk in regards to our beliefs. And that's what Mars is doing right now. 1 year, Mars is marching right along with the inner planets, and a year later, Mars is opposite and in the middle of its retrograde cycle. So here we are with these inner planets and all these conjunctions they have been making and all the death and rebirth they are creating for us on very personal levels. But because they have passed over Pluto and they now are approaching the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, we're not only moving through all this on a very personal level, we are moving through it in the broad collective levels that we see happening on the planet right now. I want to take a moment and talk about Mercury retrograde as well.
Kim, can I add something about the Mars in Pisces?
Sure. Hey, yeah. Mars in Pisces natally, go for it.
Yeah. Retrograde in Pisces, Mars. Yeah, so I'll have a Mars return coming up here. And what I've found over the years is just it always challenges me to get more serious in my search for, I guess, authenticity. You said congruency; those are big words, and those are hard to achieve. But every time I come around the horn again to a Mars return, it always makes me want to go inside, become a lot more yin, and search for a new path or an unfamiliar direction in my own life. Mm-hmm. And, of course, the storm kind of initiated a lot of those issues with us, when you have, some trauma and loss and things like that. So, here we are again. So before you moved on to Mercury, I just kind of wanted to add that in reflection on my own chart.
Well, thank you, Medium Monk. I appreciate you sharing that. You're welcome to interrupt me anytime. Love your insights and feedback, and I'm sure our listeners do too. So thank you, and happy Mars return to you sometime in later March, I think it'll be.
Yep.
So what? Yeah. Thank you, honey. So what I wanted to speak a little bit about the Mercury retrograde. For years, Medium Monk and I have done pay it forward webinars with Mercury retrograde, and I got some activity with my nieces coming up. So, and again, still dealing with insurance stuff and cleanup of the yard. I don't think I'm going to get a Mercury retrograde webinar done, and so I want to share with some of my thoughts with you. So Mercury is retrograde from February 25th, 26th to March 20th. February 25th, 26th, turning retrograde across the U.S. at 2234 Pisces, and going direct March 20th at 829 Pisces. The highlight of the Mars retrograde cycle when it reverses back over the Sun is March 7th at 1653 Pisces. So we have a Mars retrograde from 23 to 8 degrees Pisces. Oh, have I been talking about Pisces energy right now? This is Mars retrograde in a water sign with a highlight at 17 Pisces. Mercury retrograde in water it stirs up the emotions. Mercury's the left brain. When it's retrograde, it asks us to go right brain. And there's nothing more right brain than whole brain Pisces. And so it can really create a lot of mental, emotional chaos as our emotions and our thoughts bounce back and forth off of each other. So it does require us to go inward, to really kind of quiet down and listen to what's going on for us emotionally. And if we are experiencing those classic distortions of Pisces, despondency, letdown, depression, couch potato, I just can't make sense of my world, I just want my escapism. That is just getting us in touch with what's not working in our reality anymore. And it's getting us in touch with how we, again, have to turn deeper towards that connection with source energy in our world. Now, Mercury is in its fairly active cycle, but what I also want to point out in addition to the planetary aspects is that really pace yourself and breathe that last weekend of February when Mercury turns retrograde, because during that time period, Mars is going to be making a last quarter square to Uranus, February 27th, 28 degrees Aquarius Mars, 28 degrees Taurus Uranus. And last quarter squares are tenseful aspects. This is a crisis in consciousness or beliefs aspect. And with Mars and Uranus, two high-octane planets, they're not always conducive to slowing down and going inward. Mars is still late Aquarius. It's going to be right on that solar eclipse new moon point that we experienced February 17th. So it can be a volatile Mercury turning stationary retrograde weekend in late February. Again, breathe, pace yourself, get your exercise, do those communications again, however you need to do so, however many times you need to have the conversation in order to calm the energy down. What we also have going on with this Mercury retrograde, and it ties into our last Mercury retrograde. The last Mercury retrograde in November was in Sagittarius, Scorpio. And Mercury had a conjunction with Venus at 23 Scorpio, just before it went direct at 21 Scorpio. And then Mercury had a conjunction with Venus late January, 15 Aquarius. We are now going into the third Mercury-Venus conjunction. And so Mercury turns retrograde, 23 Pisces, February 28th, Mercury's third conjunction to Neptune, 22 Pisces. This is a 3-time Mercury-Venus conjunction series. They don't always happen a lot. We alternate between one conjunction and sometimes they have 3. Not a specific rhythm to it that I've discovered. But if we're going to have 3 Mercury-Venus conjunctions over the course of this winter, this has really been a time period to ponder what your values are, and to really prioritize or funnel those values into what is ultimately most important to you. I had to do it on an extreme physical level that is still having ramifications for me emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. And this is in Pisces again. Well, have I talked enough about that archetype? Well, guess what? Mercury is also in process of having 3 conjunctions to Mars. Hold on, I've got to get my first one. Apologize. So the first one, was in that time period. Oh, what was it? In middle January, when we had all of the protesting going on in Minneapolis, and we had 2 white U.S. citizens that were shot by ICE agents, literally unprovoked. Well, Mercury made a conjunction to Mars in the middle of that, January 18th, 26 degrees Capricorn. Mercury's going to make a retrograde conjunction to Mars, March 15th, 10 degrees Pisces. They will have a third conjunction later on, April 20th, at 8.5 degrees Aries. And so, over the course of January, February, March, April, Mercury is just dancing back and forth with Mars. Endings, new beginnings. Endings, new beginnings. Again, how are we wanting to act in our world? How are we wanting to take actions in our world? How are we seeing things acting out on the planet? And oh, by the way, talking of Pisces again, I just keep getting these intuitive hits that Donald Trump and the mega crowd are not going to be able to steal elections from us. We are not going to nationalize the midterm elections. There are 50 states. There are how many? 3,000 counties in the country. They can't bombard all of them. They will have spots of chaos. However, they are pissing off even Republican local election officials. And they are playing their hand too early. And thank God they are, because it's getting everybody up in arms to be proactive of how we are going to protect the integrity of our elections. Not from non-citizens trying to vote. That is like 0.0001% of the voting population. But to protect us from all of these megas who just don't want to accept the evolving diversity of humanity happening all over the planet. I have recently, and I would say maybe over the last few weeks, just been starting to feel that this is going to be a major bloodshed for them. May I please be right, Source Energy? I just feel that there are so many ways they are destroying everything that is good about the USA. And it is becoming more and more clear, even to those who are non-politically aware in the consensus state. Stay tuned. We'll see how it goes forward, but those have been the intuitive hits that I really see coming along. And so these Mercury-Mars conjunctions, how are you going to choose to act? How are you going to choose to initiate? I do want to say that Mercury is going to make 3 waning trines to Jupiter during this retrograde cycle. They are all taking place in Pisces and Cancer. And so this is also a time period for us to have that emotional reflection, listening to our intuition on emotional levels. silencing that busybody left brain sometimes and allowing our intuition to really come through for us. And I do think that there is a majority that will come together of wanting, to have peace and harmony amongst ourselves versus all of the strife and war. This now leads me to the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. And thank you for letting me go a little extra longer on this podcast. I'm making up for the ones we missed throughout our storm. So thank you. And so Saturn moved into Aries to initiate a brand new 28, 29-year cycle around the zodiac. He went into Aries February 13th. Saturn and Neptune will have one conjunction February 20th at 044, 045 Aries. Some people are saying 0 degrees Aries. Some people are saying 1 degree Aries. Regardless, it is the very first degree of the 360-degree circle. It's the very first degree of the zodiac. They are a 36-year cycle together. And I said previously, by the way, it's 045 degrees Aries, okay? I have said previously that the Saturn-Neptune cycles on a political arena have always been autocracy versus democracy, autocracy versus democracy. You can see it through Russia's history. Someone posted recently, I can't remember who the person was, the astrologer. They had multiple charts on how the Saturn-Neptune conjunctions have affected Puerto Rico. And here was Bad Bunny with his Super Bowl halftime message of love at the Saturn-Neptune conjunctions in Aries. I have said that they can vary between righteous action, that can be distorted or natural maybe, and spiritual inspiration, which might be a little more higher octave message between the two of them. What I want to read for you is some thoughts on segment 1 class from EAN's teachings. I did a segment 1 class on Saturn-Neptune as a planetary pair. So I'm just going to read a few things for you, okay? Saturn is timeless. Neptune is timeless. Saturn is time. Neptune is formless. Saturn is form. Neptune is immortality. Saturn is mortality. Neptune is unconditioned. Saturn is conditioned. Neptune dissolves. Saturn crystallizes. Neptune is religious guilt. Saturn is consensus guilt. So Jeffrey Wolf Green coined the term for Saturn-Neptune as the divine discontent. Because Saturn is form and time, it has a discontent with an inability to make Neptune conform to its wishes. Neptune is formless and timeless. Neptune requires Saturn to create within the boundaries of what is possible. In other words, not all of us get to be president of a country in a given lifetime. So Saturn and Neptune represent a natural cycle to create form and dissolve form as the lessons in life present themselves. And the ultimate dissolving of form, Neptune-Saturn, is a physical death and return to formless consciousness. So, that evolutionary process of manifesting form through Saturn takes place through one's state of consciousness, Neptune. Consciousness creates form relative to the environmental conditioning factors each of us are born into in any given incarnation. Consciousness itself, Neptune, is relative to each soul's individual evolutionary requirements and lessons. In other words, it's a long, long evolutionary journey via reincarnation through consensus, individuated, and spirituated states of consciousness and form. Together, Saturn and Neptune create natural, periodic cycles of depression and disillusionment. It causes us to involute, to reflect. Saturn's security and form can resist change and evolution. It wants to crystallize. Neptune requires transcendence beyond the form, the dissolvement of it. Neptune is always tasking Saturn with evolution of form. In other words, evolving beyond the environmental conditioning factors of any society in any given lifetime. Now, this is easier said than done. Neptune is always tasking Saturn to reach for divinity beyond the manifestation of form. That allows form to be a reflection of consciousness. It allows for a state of grace in any and all circumstances. Unfortunately, human-made religions currently distort standards of right, wrong conduct in almost all societies. Remember, Saturn is that consensus-conditioned guilt. We must conform to laws, rules, norms. Neptune is that consensus religious guilt. We must conform to any religion's laws, rules, and norms. Well, guess what? Saturn and Neptune cycle is ultimately reaching for deeper understandings of natural spiritual principles and how those principles create beliefs and forms and societies that can reflect natural laws. Remember, natural law is giving, including, and sharing. The patriarchal distortions of that are taking, hoarding, and excluding. And so you can listen to this again. You can ponder this and think about how Saturn, Neptune having a conjunction in the first degree of the zodiac is inspiring all of us, consensus, individuated, and spirituated forms of consciousness, to move forward together over the next 3.5 decades, to move forward in new ways over Neptune's 165-year cycle through the zodiac, through Saturn's next 3 decades of manifesting form on its cycle through the zodiac. All this chaos of what I call the Great Ingress Decade and these outer planets changing signs, it is breaking up consensus. And yes, it is creating chaos. And yes, it is asking us to change faster than we maybe want to. And yes, some countries and cultures will do it better than others. And it is up to all of us to choose how we want to participate individually, within our family, square Cancer, within our occupation, square Capricorn, within our relationships, oppositions to Libra. It's up to all of us how we want to participate in our cultures and our countries of changing and doing things differently. May you be so inspired to action that you are part of helping create peace on the planet and harmony with all living beings in this beautiful, beautiful circle that we call Gaia. All right, everyone. Thank you for letting me share that. I'll speak a little more on Saturn and Neptune as the podcasts go by, but I just wanted to share these thoughts with you.
We appreciate it. Thank you for listening, everybody. So until the next full moon or approaching the next full moon, continue to move with joy and lots of passion on this always inspiring journey to the core of our souls. Thanks for tuning in, everyone.